Right, good morning. I think this is the first official place where we can say welcome to JVol, and I'm happy to do it before the keynote, so I beat Bert-Jan to it. So the honor and duty is mine to make sure you guys are awake and stay awake at least up till the keynote. And I'm glad you at least got almost a full room here. I'm going to talk a bit a different talk than most talks usually. There's going to be a lot of switching between applications, and I'm going to show you a lot of tools that I have installed on this machine. But first, I'll use a little bit of theory to introduce it all, and then have some jokes for you at the end. So thank you for coming to Master Your Tools. If you want to tweet about it, please use the hashtag so I can find them and like them and maybe respond to questions and things. But let's get started. I'll have to start this talk with a little bit of a disclaimer. And that's because I might sound a bit like your math teacher or your piano teacher, maybe your Russian ballet instructor or your mom. So heads up, if at some point you think, oh my God, this is something my mom would say, maybe she'll pop in and at least you know. But some things in life can't be helped. Moms are often right. So let's get started. And if you thought you're going to get away easy this morning, there's a little bit surprise. I'm going to start you off with Neurology 101. So take out your notebooks. I hope you did your homework. Let's have a look at this thing inside our head. So this is a picture of your average brain. Nothing special. Most of you probably know what it does, what it's used for, or what it should be used for. I mean, a lot of people use it for the wrong things. But this amazing piece of machinery consists of about 1 trillion cells, 100 billion neurons. Each of those neurons have 5,000 connections to other neurons. And that's how we are able to walk, talk, make software, and make funny remarks about other people. And it's an amazing piece of energy. It takes up about 20 to 25% of the total energy of your body. So yeah, it's wonderful technology, but it also has its limits. I mean, if you have to compare it with something from our world, this is our CPU. And every CPU has a maximum amount of cycles it can run in a second. It has a maximum number of working memory it can use. And the same things hold for our brain. And in cognitive psychology, there's a term to indicate how busy this thing is, and that's called cognitive load. And a lot of what I'm going to show you today has something to do with cognitive load. I mean, I wanted to show off all of these cool tools, and then I thought, well, I have to tie some bit of a lesson in here as well. So I dove into psychology and figured out, hey, this is actually what I'm trying to solve with this. So cognitive load is a term in psychology that says the amount of information the brain has readily available during a task. And this can be like, oh, I have to get some groceries for my wife. Oh, my kid's birthday is next week, so I have to do this. Oh, right, I'm working on this very important debugging task, and I'm also supposed to be thinking about the architecture session next week. All those pieces of information are all available in your brain, and they cause cognitive load. And the problem with this is that cognitive load has an effect on your conscious effort. If you're doing something like programming or talking to someone, or talking to a room full of people, you're expending conscious effort. And this conscious effort leads to something that's called a cognitive strain. And this cognitive strain, if it becomes too hard, it will lead to something that's called ego depletion. And I think that's something everybody experiences about maybe 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. If somebody comes up to you and says, let's have a meeting about this, and everybody thinks, oh my God, a meeting. I can't do this anymore. And basically what this says is your cognitive skills have reached their limit. You won't be able to focus anymore. You won't be able to switch between contexts anymore. If you're working on a hard task and somebody rings you up, you handle the phone call and then try to get back to your debugging task, you'll be like, what was I doing? And somewhere between 3 and 4 o'clock, you'll say, why is it 5? Isn't it 5 o'clock yet? And that's because of ego depletion. And if you have ego depletion and you continue to work, then that's going to lead to giving into impulses and getting distracted. That's when things happen like, oh, hey, you brought something from home, let's play with that. Or an email comes in with a newsletter, you'll do that. You'll be much easier to distract, and it's much more difficult to get anything done. So that's cognitive load. And let's have a look at what an average day in our life is. I mean, we have this phone. I mean, everybody has one, except my wife. Hers is in for service, and she's going nuts because she has no phone for 3 days. So this thing is pretty important in life, apparently. We've got email, especially in the workplace. Email is still, well, on average, probably somewhere between 10 and 40 a day, depending on your role. We have all sorts of alerts from maybe monitoring systems of your software to WhatsApp messages and whatnot. And of course, where people are talking and talking. Unless you're wearing your noise cancelling headphones there all day, then this is not a problem. And while all of these impulses and bits of information come at us, we as Java developers or somewhere in the Java ecosystem have to remember commands like this. And I'm sure most of you use these things so often that you'll be able to dream them. You are probably not even thinking about typing them in. But the thing is, this is a lot of information to keep in mind when you're working. And if you want to change little bits of it, I'd say it's too much information, and we can do better. And this is just one of the things I'm going to show you now, but there's a lot of things you can do to help take some of this cognitive load away and make all of these things we have to do around our development feel almost like playing the piano. I mean, somebody who plays the piano, when they start out, when they have to play a chord, they have to think about every key they have to press. But if they practice a lot, eventually it becomes, which chord was it? Okay, I'll just play a C chord. And they won't have to think about it anymore. So I'm pretty sure no one's going to be surprised here that the first tool that I would like to show here is IntelliJ ID. I mean, who uses IntelliJ? Right? Who does not use IntelliJ? See, what do you use? VS Code? Vim? Okay. So what I'm going to say here doesn't necessarily mean you should use IntelliJ, but what I'm going to show is that IntelliJ has a lot of features that a lot of people don't know about that can help you raise your productivity. And for example, VS Code has basically the same things. I mean, I've been looking into VS Code, and your key map can be almost directly ported from IntelliJ to VS Code. So there are things you can do to speed up your development process. And I remember when I came to IntelliJ, one of the main reasons I switched to it from Eclipse to IntelliJ was because it was keyboard centric. You don't have to use the mouse for anything in IntelliJ. And you can define custom shortcuts for basically everything. And they have this super cool feature to find any action. I mean, if you're still going through the menus like tools, no, this is not what I'm looking for, and like that, please stop. Please use Command-Shift-A or whatever it is on Windows to look through all the actions IntelliJ has available. It's so much easier, and you'll probably find actions you never knew were there. And one of the things that I use a lot, and people, when they see me using it, say, well, how do you do that? And it almost feels like magic, is multi-cursor editing. You can do column editing, you can add multiple selections. It's really easy. I'll show some of it. And you've got live templates where you can make little bits of code that you use a lot and make them available almost through code completion as well. So let's get into the magic. Multi-cursor actions. It's really just what the name says. You can have multiple cursors in one editor and then type at all of those places at the same time. An easy one for that, if you have to just change 2 or 3 lines that are the same, you can double tap Option and hold it for at the second point, and then just use the cursors up and down to add extra cursors. Or when you're doing find, you can select all of the occurrences and then type over them, and you have something that's called column mode. Now, let's see what this looks like. Column mode, for example, is if you want to add a nice block of comments, which we all like to do. Let's say I want to do it like this. But there has to be some sort of warning in here, and I want to add stars here. Now I could do this, but that's not the way to go. I can enable column mode and just write star here, and then go there and write star there. And this is column mode. It works anywhere. It works in code as well. Don't forget to turn it off again, because now if I want to select something, I'm going to select a block. But you can turn it off with the same short key as you turn it on, and then it's just normal again. The multi-cursor, that's before, for example, if I want to remove read only from all of these 4 fields, I can just double tap and hold Option, do this, and it's gone. And the other one, multi-select, is also some. It's taken me a while to to figure out how to show what the power of multi-select is. But here, for example, I have a class where I have this find user by name function, and somehow the API of this thing changed, and I want to change all of my invocations of find user by name to find user by fuzzy name. Well, I can just change them one by one. I can do find replace, but maybe if I don't know exactly what his name is, then you can do find and then Control Command G to select all of them. And the fun thing is I can now use code completion here. That's something you don't have in the find replace up there, but you do have it if you do it like this and say, okay, this is the one I need. And then I change it in all of the locations in this file. It's something that if you try to explain it to someone, they say, why do you need that? Why don't you just replace all? Well, with replace all, you don't have code completion. So this is multi-cursor editing. I know Vim has it. I know VS Code has it. I know Sub8 Edit was one of the first that had it, I think. And a lot of editors have it these days. So try using it sometimes, and you'll probably find ways to be faster. Next thing is window splitting. By default, IntelliJ does not have shortcuts for window splitting, but Emacs does. And I used to use Emacs a lot, so if anyone else uses Emacs, these commands probably look similar to what Emacs does with multi-windows. I use Command-Shift-S to start split mode, and then I have the option for horizontal, vertical, unsplit, or change between them. And this is very useful if you say, I want to have the API for this class. Next to it, say give me the API. Oh, this is the API. Then I can do programming here, and I can see the others, and I can go nuts with this if you want. I mean, this is not practical anymore, but you can if you want to. And you can also, if you have database queries running in one of these windows, you can put them in there as well, and maybe they can be smaller. But if you're in this situation and unsplit's important, just unsplit, 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 and everything's there. But it's especially if you try to use it, if you switch a lot between 2 files, try putting them next to each other. So navigating panels. I hate it when I see people going to the left and then hoping, where's this thing? And I'll have to exit presentation mode to do it. But there's the project file and the other things. All of them have a number. This is your project panel. I didn't find anything at the moment, so 3 is not available, but 9 is version control, 0 is messages. There's 0 in the messages at the moment. 7 is hierarchy, and 4 is normal run, but there's nothing running. 5 is debug, but there's nothing debugging. But all of those panels that you use a lot have numbers. And if you want to switch between them, tapping it once puts focus to the window, tapping it again puts focus back to the editor where you were. So you can switch between these windows easily. And here, if I want to go to my project and say I want to see what's in this, all right, the file was called HTML, and then it's tap it again and it's gone. Okay, so mom just popped in, because if you're asking how do I learn this, well, there's no easy way. There's just practice. And like a lot of these things, when I used to when I started using Emacs, for example, I wanted to learn the shortcuts of Emacs. And the way I did that was I just printed out all of the shortcuts on a large A3 piece of paper and put it on the wall behind my screen, and then you start using it. Every time you're like, oh, there has to be a shortcut for this, then go look for it, use it. And I still do that. Sometimes if I'm trying to learn a new shortcut, and I find myself not using it, I'll just write it on a post-it and put it on my screen, so that the next time it's, all right, that's shortcut. I do it 3-4 times, and then it's in your mind, and you no longer have to think about it. And that's when some task moves from cognitive strain to cognitive ease, and it will free up your resources. So that's IntelliJ. I think it's the least exciting thing I have to show. So the next set of things I have is browser extensions. These are for Chrome, but most of them have similar extensions in other browsers. Most important one that I use is Vimium. It's called the Hacker's Browser. Basically gives you keyboard access to everything and anything you want to do in a web page. I'll show it in a second. Initab is a replacement for when you open a new tab. Normally you get the Google screen and whatever Google thinks you need, and Initab is more developer central. It gives you your recent GitHub history, Stack Overflow history, etc. So if you had 3 or 4 questions of Stack Overflow which you visited and say, which was it? I can just find it in Initab. One tab, show that in a sec. I won't spoil it yet because then it's no fun. Well, in our line of work, a JSON viewer should be default. If you don't have it, install it. It'll render it nicely. You can fold it in, fold it out. Edit this cookie is one of my favorites, especially for all those pesky websites that say, I want to place a cookie at your site. And so, okay, place it. And when I'm done, I'll just delete all of them. It's one little button in your bar, and you can edit, delete, and anything with it. Editing is also fun, especially if you're trying to see if maybe someone has a security vulnerability. Just try changing some session IDs. And a UA switcher. I do some front-end work as well, and then we still have to switch to see if things still work. And some backends. I'll admit I'm not using it a lot anymore, but it's still a useful thing. So Vimium is, since I've had it in my browser, I've loved using the internet even more. It has a familiar shortcut for navigating a page. If you're using Vim, you'll know these things. It's H is for left, J is for up, K down, L right. And you can select links with F. You'll probably like it if I'll show it in the site in a second. You can navigate to input files with GI. And what this looks like is, this is Initab, by the way. For example, we go, oh, I got no internet. Oh my God. What is this third world country? All right. Pate. Please give me internet. I'll have to show it on something local. Right. I've got something in cache, I guess. So here's a website, and I can scroll through it with these keys. I can go to the end, to the beginning. You can scroll spaces to it. But one of the fun things here is when you say, when I'm reading this, and yeah, Okay. Oh, but it's fine. Yeah, it's fine. Thanks. So if I want to navigate onto something on this page, then well, instinctively you'll probably reach for either your trackpad or your mouse. But I can use F, and Vimium highlights all of the clickable elements in this page, and I can just type whatever mnemonic is displayed. So this is going to fail because I don't have internet. But if I type, for example, the K, then it's going to navigate to the link in top. And it works with all of these things. This is how I navigate really quickly through Jenkins. Jenkins has a lot of clickable things, and I can navigate through the builds and histories and stuff, but just with my keyboard. And if you paid attention, at the bottom of this page is a few input fields to leave some feedback. And I could scroll down there, but if I know there's an input field, I can also do GI, and it'll just navigate to the first. It'll navigate to the first input field. Oh, it's refreshing. It's not working. Anything else with an input field? Yeah, let's see. No input field. Yeah, here's an input field. So I just typed GI, and then it navigates to the first available input field. If there are more, it'll highlight all of them, and you can tap through them without tapping through the links. So that's just something that has been annoying in web pages forever. Oh, look, I've got internet. Yes, I'm okay with you checking my own traffic. Oh, cool. Can we now show this? Yeah, GI. No? You don't want to? No. Maybe this one. Nothing. Okay. Well, that's the lamest demo ever. Let's move on. So, and there's a lot more. I mean, if you tap question mark, these are all the commands you have available in Vimium. You can even move tabs around in the top and move this window to a new window, duplicate it, and all of these things just with using the keyboard. I love it. So Initab, I just showed it because I opened a new tab. This is what a new tab for me now looks like. On the left, we have popular things on the Reddit JavaScript. Apparently, I haven't viewed any JavaScript pages recently, so there's no relevant history. But on the right, you can see GitHub issues I've recently visited. And in the bottom, I have some of my custom web links, which are all of the comics I read on a daily basis. Super important. But this is a lot, for me, this is a lot better to use than just the standard hello Google type of what you're looking for. And there are some other things here you can do, but they're in the paid version. So let's see, presentation. And the next one I promised to show you. I think you already got a bit of a glimpse of it. This is what my browser sometimes looks like. People say, how do you know what kind of tabs you have there? Well, I know which tabs there are, but I understand if other people don't. So the next one, I found this quite recently. It's called One Tab. What it does is if you click the icon in the top here, it'll close all of these tabs and save the page you were into a little list, and you can just go back to them later. And if I just do it here, it's going to close all of these. And these were the tabs I had open, and I can go back to them whenever I want. I can restore all of them if I want to just have the same session back. And you can see you can give the sessions names. I have here some tabs with tech I want to play with, on Home Assistant stuff. Well, it's all things I want to remember, but not necessarily need to eat memory. So this is, if you're a tab hoarder like me, One Tab's really nice. Right, the next tool that I've come to love on this machine is Alfred. Anybody here who knows what Alfred does? Oh, just a few. Okay, then I'll probably be able to surprise a few people. So Alfred is for macOS. It's a Spotlight replacement. It replaces the input bar when you do Command Space to search for things, and you can completely customize it. You can use it to insert snippets if you have certain pieces of text that you use a lot, you can just put it in a snippet, give it a name, and whenever you need it, you can use Alfred to insert it in your emails or what. You can define workflows. One of the larger workflows I've made with this is if I want to give a talk like this one, I can type command space talk, and it'll show the talks I have available. And if I press enter now, it's going to start this presentation and minimize all the other windows and put this thing to full screen. But I have more of these things. I'll show a few more. It searches your bookmarks. That might sound a bit lame, but if you do the bookmarks correctly, they're really, really helpful. For example, well, it searches all of your bookmarks, but I've come to love it mostly because if you use structure in the name of your bookmarks, you can mnemonic websites you use a lot. So, for example, when I always go to work on my bicycle, so 5 minutes before I like to check is it going to rain or not. If I just type BUI, it'll go to Buienradar. And yeah, I'm a bit of a weather nerd, so if in the summer we have some thunderstorms coming in, I have lightning maps under IntelliJ, and if there's hurricane activity in the Atlantic, then I like to look at that as well. And then I can type NHC, then it will go to the Hurricane Center, National Hurricane Center of the United States. And I have a lot of these. But more useful in work is, for example, if I have to navigate to the application I'm working on, and since at my work the application I'm working on is just one, so this is currently the stuff I have. This is one's for demo, but if I type app, I now have a choice. Do I want to go to the CI? Do I want to go to development, acceptation, or production, or maybe even to GitLab? And this just gives me really fast access to all of these environments. And you can go nuts with that. It's just your own discipline in how you name your bookmarks. Snippets. Snippets are very helpful, especially if you want to type these command symbols. Let's see. Yeah. Normally, I wouldn't know how to input those on a regular keyboard, but I have a way to do that here. I say command. That's the command symbol, and option. There's option. So those symbols are all available on Mac and on Windows as well. ASCII art, very important in chats, of course. So if I want to put, sometimes there's something like, okay, there's a bug in here, I know, but I'm going to do a happy Gary or a fast Gary. And then I'll say, yep, it's broken, but not it. And I've inserted the happy Gary, and I have a lot of these. I have a few Garys. Hey, shh, go away. And there's like table flip. I'll put the table back as this, and then table flip. The bear. They're really fun if you use them in like Slack or something. And a little bit more useful. This one is a one I use a lot. I don't know about you. I guess you'll have the same experience. I get a lot of requests from recruiters saying, "Hey, hello, let's connect. I've got this wonderful opportunity for you." I've started making the difference between people who just connect without any message. They'll just get ignored. But if they at least type something that's different from the default, they'll get a message back from me. But that message is default, because if I say it's an English recruiter, I'll just say LI English. And then I'll say, "Hi, thanks for the interest." And it normally puts the cursor here and then say, "Hi, recruiter, thanks for the interest, not available," and send. So I don't have to type this. I'll just type LE and then select English, and it'll insert it here. And well, you can use, if you have a lot of standard things to type, you can use all of that. So workflows are very powerful. You can use them to run scripts, make decisions on output of the scripts, generate content. This is where I started using them, and those are pretty simple. But very useful. And I use him also to control macOS. For example, if I type VPN on, then it'll launch my VPN client and try to connect to the VPN of the client. And VPN off is the same, it'll just disconnect. And I can do Wi-Fi on, and I can do Wi-Fi off, and I can do not disturb on. And these are all things I wrote myself because it's things you usually have to click on, and I don't want to click on them. And Alfred helps in completing them. So what does it look like? I'll show Alfred. Well, this is the little bit larger workflow that starts a talk. It'll show a large thing on the screen, and it'll start some Docker containers and minimize all of the windows, and then at the end open my presentation. The dev tools, here there are a few here. I have one for hashing text. I have one for generating UUIDs, for timestamp, and converting decimal to hex and all those things. And they're especially useful if you have something like this. Let's say I have test data here, and I want to use const user6. And I want a UUID. I can now type UUID, just generate a random one. And I'll say user6. And I need a hash for JVol, because that's the password. This is a SHA-256 hash of JVol, and it just generates that. And similarly, if you somewhere have a const blue, if somebody says blue is 1, 2, 3, and so I'll have to put it to hex, then I'll say decimal to hex, 1, 2, 3, paste it in, and that's apparently 7b. So these are things that you use a lot, which I had to look up things from the internet, maybe an online converter and things like that, and just made really small scripts of them and put them in Alfred. I've been trying to think of a really complicated workflow, but these workflow to show what it can do, but these workflows actually work best if you have them really small. Just do things you normally do 2 or 3 steps for and put it in the workflow. Convert things with it. Yeah, and this is something I've put it on here. I still haven't found something to do with it other than just control lights from here, but I can't control them from here either, so it's not very difficult. So I've been looking for Alfred to say what alternatives are if you're not using a Mac, and it apparently there's just 2 clones. Albert is almost a clone of Alfred, but for Linux, and Wox is the same for Windows. So you're not tied to Mac if you want to use something like this. All right, a little break. This is something people sometimes ask: is it worth the time you put in to make these things compared to what you get out of it? Well, the fun thing is, if you know this comic, then maybe you've seen it. It's XKCD. This guy always makes these beautiful math-inspired comics, and what you see here is a table where you have how many times do you use something and how much time does your optimization save, and then it'll give you whether or not you'll get the effort back in 5 years' time. I'll have to admit I'm regularly in the gray area, but that's because I like learning things about this, and it's also kind of made me realize I have to share this with people so you can learn from me and not invest as much time as I did, and maybe we'll balance the universe with it. But to me, it's always worth the time. We'll get back to that later. So on to the next. Shell magic. If you're on a Mac, you probably use the shell a lot. On Linux, I can't believe how you would work without a shell. And nowadays, Windows also has a powerful shell. And I know a lot of people who say, yeah, with the shell, I just type a few commands in it, but I don't really know cool things to do with it. I think there's a lot of opportunity there for increasing your productivity, your personal productivity. So I'd say please try to make the shell your friend. It can do a lot for you. You can use your prompt. You can use it to convey all sorts of information about what you're doing, what environment you're in, what commands around your work are doing. It's super cool. And aliases are, if you're going to use one thing in the shell, please use aliases. Then you can use these commands and just type 2 or 3 characters. And scripts, well, yeah, that's you can use whatever script you want to make things easier. And one thing a lot of people don't know in a shell is that a shell can also support key bindings. So shortcuts we use in like IntelliJ, we can probably bind something to them in the shell as well. Let's see with prompts. In the prompt, you can just show your context information. I also use it a lot at work to convey information that you're in a dangerous situation. For example, if we start a session with Terraform, then we load credentials in memory to connect to our cloud provider, which enable you to destroy machines. So that's something, at the moment that's in memory, any Terraform apply or destroy command can destroy things you don't want to destroy. So when you load it in memory, my prompt says, please be aware, Terraform credentials are available, so be careful what you're doing. And my prompt normally looks something like this. It has 2 icons on the left to show me 2 things. The first is general system settings, and they display Office. So that means they're in Office configuration. So they use the nexus of the client, they use the proxy of the client, etc., and npm registries. And the second one is what the current shell has as a configuration. It also says Office, so this means it has my shortcuts for my work projects. Both of them can also be switched to home, but if the first one switches to home, that means any project of the client won't work at that point because all of the pointers to like Nexus have been changed to Maven Central, and I'll have to switch those before I can do a client project again. Aliases, remember these? I never type this. I type things like this. mcist is for me Maven clean install skip test. mcc is Maven clean compile. mval Maven validate. GAA get add all. GST get status. GCMS is get commit with message. GP get push. GF get fetch. GRB get rebase. GCO get checkout. Gvrp get fetch rebase push. It's very useful if I've used a branch for a while and have to rebase on something and immediately push it. Normally it's you try to push something, Git tells you, hey, you're out of date. Okay, now I have to fetch, rebase, and then push. If I expect there are changes that require all of those actions, I'll just type gvrp, and then I'll do it all in a chain, and it'll quit the second it encounters a problem, and then I'll just have to probably do a merge. But if all goes well, it'll just push everything through. And GP sub is git push set upstream. So there's a lot more of these. If you use Z shell and you've used Oh My Z shell, then you have like hundreds of these for free. But again, feel free to adapt them to your own work environment or do what you used to do. Scripts. At the client currently working for, I was very happy to see that everything in their environment was named consistently. So if a project is called UI, then it's called UI in Jenkins, it's called UI in GitLab, it's called UI in the issue tracker, it's called UI in all of the tools. And that enables you to do some fun things. We have a few of these scripts that if you're in the folder of a project and I want to go to Jenkins for that project, I just type Jenkins and that script sees, oh, you're in the UI project. Okay, I know Jenkins is over here, so I'll just go to this URL/UI and then you'll be in Jenkins. And that becomes especially powerful since we added the last one, MR, which is short for merge request. If I'm done with the task and I've pushed my branch, then I'll type MR and it'll open GitLab with a merge request from the branch I'm working on to master. I don't have to look that up. I'll just have to type my description and click submit. And we have a lot of these. We have things to do claim tasks, so I don't have to go to Fabricator, and I can release tasks. I can comment on tasks all from the command line. So key bindings, they finally allow you to do shortcuts everywhere, even in the shell. I use them, for example, for time tracking. I have Time Warrior for this. I can see. Oh, this is what my time tracking last month looked like. If I want to track time for today, I can just do Ctrl X T for today. If I forgot to do it yesterday, I have Ctrl X Y for yesterday. And that's then for default time trackings for 8 hours. If it's anything else, I'll have to type it in, but those are usually the numbers I put up. And there's a few more. I mean, if you're looking through history, you have things like Ctrl R to search it. There's a lot you can do with this. I even have started trying to do things like branch switching in Git by using fuzzy search. So if I do this, I'll just get all the branches we have, and I can start typing, and it'll help me select a branch and check that one out. That's it's branch switching. All right. This one's really cool. If you thought all of these were nice, this one, Hammerspoon, it's disclaimer up front, Hammerspoon's difficult to find a replacement for anything other than Mac. Hammerspoon allows you to basically control the entire macOS from key bindings or automatic switchers. So it's really a Swiss Army knife for macOS. I've used it, for example, to create a hyperkey, and a hyperkey is an extra modifier that allows me to add a full new layer of shortcuts to my keyboard without interfering with system shortcuts. Some of them do window management, app switching, and of course inserting emoji. And I have a soundboard with it. So hyperkey, I've used Carabiner to remap my right option key to hyper. That's basically just a key that's not on my keyboard, which I use to enable a modifier. It helps me to beat shortcut conflicts. Some of the shortcuts that I want to use are global shortcuts for macOS or some other tool. But I don't have that trouble anymore because this hyper level is not used by any application because it just normally doesn't exist. And how I did it is by mapping the right option key to a virtual function key. macOS supports them up to F20. So you can even make more layers if you want, but you'll have to sacrifice keys for it. An important thing for this, when I use it, is window management. I can put a screen in full screen by doing hyper up, putting it either on the left or right half by hyper left right, putting it in a quarter with hyper 1, 2, 3, 4, and I can switch in between monitors if I'm at work with hyper shift up down. So what does it look like? For example, this one I want it to the left, and I want a new terminal, and I want it on the right. Or maybe I want this one up there, and I want another one in the corner 3. And all of this can be done by not using my mouse. And there are other tools for this, but the fun thing is about Hammerspoon is you can replace a lot of other tools by just writing a few Lua scripts. App switching is definitely a favorite of mine. I hate using this, and mostly because the order changes all the time. And you can change that as well, but then I'm not happy about the order. And the problem is, if you, for example, I want to go to Alfred and I just tap one too many, then now the order is no longer what it was in my head, and it's a nightmare. So what I did is I've got my hyperkey, and I can press the hyperkey with my thumb, and I made sure all the apps are under a key that's navigable with my right hand, so I can switch to Terminal, Activity Monitor, Rocket Chat, which has to start up now because I killed it, Notes, Chrome, IntelliJ, Finder, Calendar, all of this just with one hand. And you can do with it what you want. And the fun thing is it switches back and forth. If I, for example, say I want to go to IntelliJ and I press IntelliJ again, it switches back to the window I was. And well, these are just applications I use a lot. If you use different applications, simply bind different apps to these keys. But the fact that I can just switch to the app I want without having to think how deep it is in this hierarchy, that's just very cool. Emoji, well, I already showed you how you can use Alfred to insert snippets. You can also use Alfred to insert emoji. But we have some of emojis we use a lot. In our planning tool, we use certain emojis constantly to indicate what sort of task something is. So I didn't want to have to look those up anymore. So I created an on-screen keyboard to show these emoji are available by just one keystroke. If I want to say this epic is done, I can just add a check. If I want to say this epic or this task has a time box on it, I'll put a clock on it. If you say this epic is the B for broomstick, that means it's oh, the broom doesn't work in IntelliJ. But there are all sorts of things here, and usually I think the font's broken because the letters are supposed to be there as well. But up, down, and so these emoji I don't have to look up. They won't get lost in history if I don't use them a lot. They're available under one key. We use them in commit messages as well. Activate it like that. So I've talked fast enough to show you the coolest thing of this, because once you have an extra modifier, you don't just have one extra layer. You can have that modifier with shift or with option or with command or control. So we have like 5 or 6 new layers. And at some point I thought, Hammerspoon has an API to play sounds. I thought, how fun / annoying would it be if I could just use appropriate sounds in a meeting whenever they come up? And sure, why the heck not? Because it's fun. I can do hyper command with any other key to play a certain sound. Oh. And it sounds like this. Most useful is also this one. And sometimes we have a meeting that starts and it just takes a while for people to get in there. I have this elevator music. It's super nice. And go! You can go nuts with this. I mean, Bert-Jan's not here, but I stole his every year when Christmas is coming, he just starts annoying people by playing this. Don't worry, it's not the entire song, it's just a few seconds of it. But there are, I mean, the entire keyboard of mine has sounds under all of them. And they, the fun thing about it is also there are so many sounds, I usually hit the wrong key. So I say, I got a sound for it, and then I hit the wrong key. But it's yeah, it's something you can do. This is also Hammerspoon again with the hyperkey. Yeah, you can probably use it for something useful as well. Maybe you're a DJ, you can put samples under it. But this is fun too. So some other things I use, and this is just a small list of things I'll skip through. Bartender is one that cleans up this this bar for me with all the icons. These icons are applications I use a lot, but yeah, normally I don't care what they're doing, so they're hidden unless something changes, then they'll appear. AnyBar is a very small application you can use to put things in that bar, and I use it, for example, Terraform commands can run for some time or Ansible. So my script at the end says if Terraform completed successfully, it'll put a green blob in the top of my bar, and I'll see it because it pops up, and then I know, oh, Terraform's complete. And if it fails, it turns red. I use Airmail for the same reason I use all of these other tools. I've been looking at mail clients, and Airmail is also keyboard centric. It allows you to do all sorts of things just with the keyboard. And after this, all of this configuration is put in dot files. That's just a way to easily migrate this between systems. I'll have to speed up. So why were we doing this? I think it's fun. I learned a lot from it. I learned Lua, shell scripting, Python, Node.js. And if you start sharing it, then not just you benefit from it, but your team as well. And the weird smileys about it because I promised this was for you and not for your team, but sometimes your team can benefit as well. And then this last message I think I'll put up here is, I get asked a lot about this as well, is how do you get time for this? I mean, some of you will probably have, okay, we have some stupid process at work that can be accelerated if you just make a little script of it. But every time I ask to do it, I get told that it's not in the It's not okay. There's no budget, etc., etc. At some point, I came up with a beautiful acronym for this, and it's called Just Effing Do It. And it's effing because GFDI doesn't really make a word. And I hope Disney doesn't sue me for this. So the Jedi way is just do it. Sometimes making such a script like this is like 30 minutes, maybe an hour, and people won't see the benefit until you've made it. Make it at home for all I care. But people usually say, "Oh, wow, I want to use that too." And then if you tell them up front, they won't accept it. So thanks. That was it. I hope you enjoyed it.